Right, we're going to have a wee look at some elements of art over the next few weeks. So we're going to start with line, okay? We have spoken about it a wee bit before in class when we've been doing bits of art, but we're going to focus entirely on line today. So I would like you, hopefully at the end of this session, to have a line drawing that you can show me, okay? Everybody's drawings will be slightly different, although I'm going to show you a step-to-step way to draw the line drawing. Everyone's will be slightly different, so that's what makes it more interesting for me to see and for hopefully you guys to attempt as well. So first of all, we're going to look at lines. So a line is a mark that is longer than it is wide. A line can be created using materials such as pencil, pen or a brush dipped in ink. A line can be straight or curved, it can be horizontal, vertical or diagonal, and it can change direction. So that's really the definition of what a line means. So I am now going to show you some famous artwork that artists have done using only line. Okay, so Pablo Picasso was a really famous artist, and he quite often used just line in his drawings. Now he's got a line drawn of a wee dog here, and he's just used one line, and he's just basically drawn with his pen or pencil, and he hasn't even lifted his pencil up, he's just drawn a line with one continuous line of pencil, so he hasn't even lifted it from the paper. And this other drawing obviously is a portrait drawing of a lady, and it is using line, very simplified, very much straight and curved lines. There's nothing fancy in there at all, but it's obviously a portrait of a lady. Really, really nice, famous artwork, okay? We've also got an artist called Joan Miro. She was very famous as well and has drawn line and symbol. She used a lot of symbols in her drawing. You can see in this painting or this drawing here that she's mostly got stars and the shape of an eye, and she's got circles, and she's got lots of different shapes and lots of different symbols which make up her artwork, okay? And also over here, she was another artist who also specified or specialised even drawing using just a line, and didn't even take our pencil off the page in that one either. So obviously a different style of portrait, but drawn very simply using one line as well. Okay, and then we've also got, lastly, we've got Leonardo da Vinci. He was a very, very famous artist, and he was Italian, and he drew beautiful portraits, absolutely beautiful, and these are line drawings as well. So this one especially with the hands, don't know how clearly you can see it, but it's like a pastel drawing, so it's using chalk but in pencil form, and it's all line, okay? So he's got little bits of shading in there as well, but it is very much a line drawing, and you can see how sketchy some of his lines are. I quite often say to you guys when we're drawing or doing something arty that you should try and draw with sketchy lines so that you can drop out if you need to. He hasn't dropped out any of his sketchy lines, you can still see them there, but the drawing is beautiful. He's obviously focused in some of the lines that he's really happy with, and he's made them into his drawing of hands, and hands are really difficult to draw, so he's made a beautiful job. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at different lines. Now I think I have spoken about lots of these different lines before, so we've got all of these different kinds of lines. Okay, I've drawn a really quick example of each of the different kinds of lines that you've got. Okay, so you should be able to see those in the sheet. We've got our straight, wavy, thick, thin, loopy, scalloped, dotted, dashed, bumpy, zigzag, castle, spiral, squiggly, roller coaster, and a varied. So that's just a combination of lots of different types of the lines, okay? So lots of different kinds of lines there. I will also put a photograph of this on the classroom as well, so that when you're doing your art piece you can use this as a reference if you feel that you need to. You might not need to, that's absolutely fine, but it's there if you need it. Okay, so I will take a photograph of that and stick it on to the Google Classroom. So at the end of this lesson, which is just going to be a really quick lesson, it's not going to take an awful long time and it's not very complicated, but it's quite effective actually what we're going to end up with, because hopefully by the end of this lesson we're going to end up with something similar to this. Now I know that some of the girls that I had in for Golden Time, I think one afternoon. We worked a little bit on a line landscape a bit like this, but I thought, well, the rest of us haven't, so we could maybe do a little bit of work and we should end up with something this idea. Now it's really simple, okay? I'm going to show you just step by step how to draw a landscape. It's a very simple landscape, but it is a landscape nonetheless. And then I'm going to leave you to fill in your landscape with lots of lines, okay? So that is the idea. I mean, every piece of this landscape has got a different type of line, which I've used my reference sheet to help me with. So we've got lots and lots of different lines in there, and it works really well because I've used lots of different colours as well, okay? So first things first, we've got a plain piece of paper. So I've just used a normal sized piece of paper, which is A4. Okay, that's your normal sized piece of paper that you would use. If you want to do a smaller one, that's absolutely fine. Just use whichever paper you've got at home in your house. It doesn't matter which size it is, it doesn't matter, actually it doesn't even matter what colour it is. Although if you're using coloured pens or pencils, it works better on the white. But I also started one of these a while ago on a piece of coloured paper just using black lines, and that actually works really well as well. So it doesn't matter, whatever you've got at home is absolutely fine, okay? It doesn't matter whether it's coloured or whether it's a white piece. So we're going to start by just adding a little piece of land in the foreground, okay? So foreground is right at the front of the paper, so this will be the piece of land that will be closest to me, okay? So it's just like a straight line, but it's just curved a wee bit down because we want to add a little bit of depth. So I want it to go behind, each line will be behind, which will look as though the hills or the mountains or the whichever it is that we're drawing is slightly further away. Okay, so that's really the impression that we want to get. So as we can see, we've got each line is trying to give the impression of the land being slightly further away. I'm going to make this one a wee bit different from my example. I'm going to draw a tree on my one here just to make it slightly different, and it'll just give us another piece of interesting kind of information for our picture. Okay, so we've got our tree at the side. I think on this side, I think I'm going to draw a bit of a mountain kind of going off into the distance there, just one maybe, or I might actually add, no, I think maybe just one will be fine, and we might actually add a slightly hill going slightly further back at this side as well, just so we've got an added depth in our picture, okay? And then maybe in the sky, I quite like the idea of having a cloud, so I think I'll maybe have a cloud here, and I think I'll maybe have, popping behind the cloud, I'll maybe have my sun peeping out, okay? So you can have your rays coming out from the sun. You don't need to have rays, but I've decided to have on that one. So here's my very, very simplified picture here. If you want to add anything on at the front, you can. You can add some rocks like I did on that example piece. I'm just going to add a few here. This is a rocky kind of piece of ground, and I might add just like a little spiky piece of grass at the side here as well. Okay. Perfect. So that will do for my example. So I've used quite a thick permanent marker there. It doesn't have to be a permanent marker. It doesn't actually have to be very thick, but it's good if you use black. I think black really pops out on the paper for your outline. So all that I need to do now is to start filling in my areas, different areas with my different lines. So I will decide which line I'm going to use for which area. It really, really doesn't matter what you decide to use. Just bear in mind that you don't really want the same lines on areas that are quite close together. Okay, so I wouldn't necessarily use the same line I've used here in my sun or in my background. If I want to do the background, I would try and use a variety of lines and use a variety of colour as well, okay? So I don't really want them being too close together. I think it detracts from the drawing if you do that, okay? So it's just basically now a case of me filling in all my areas, using my line sheet if I need it for reference, using different colours if I'm using a white piece of paper. Again, as I said, you could use a coloured piece of paper and just purely go for black lines. That's absolutely fine as well. It looks really effective actually on the coloured paper, but it is entirely up to you, and hopefully you should end up something similar to this when you are finished. If you could get a photograph, get someone to take a photograph, if it's difficult for you to do it on your device. When Ewan does something, I take a photograph on my phone and then email it to him, and then he can upload it from there. That's the easiest way we found to do it. So that's a way of uploading it. If you could upload a picture, that would be absolutely fantastic. If you're finding it really tricky, just keep a hold of your artwork and let me know that you've done it. Okay, so make sure you mark it as handed in and mark it as completed, because that means we can see that you've done it. Okay, but I would really look forward to seeing lots and lots of different lined landscapes, hopefully very soon. Okay, great. Thank you, and hopefully I will see your lined landscapes shortly.